Well, did this not happen quickly? Michigan hires Kyle Whittingham as their head football coach. The 66-year-old West Coast Golden Boy, I want to say kind of came out of nowhere. Didn't really, though. Because as soon as this was announced, he threw his name into the ring and it was reported. Kyle Whittingham is very, very interested, and a lot of people, credit to them, were on board with it. Seemed like at first he was kind of down their list, but they hadn't really gotten through the vetting process and all of this. As far as I can tell, this is the first guy to get a real offer. And no, that is not me saying he was their number one option, because he probably wasn't. I would bet there are at least one or two before him. Either way, they get to him. Kyle Whittingham, the head coach at Michigan. I want to talk about it all. I'm going to talk about his resume. I'm going to talk about my take on it. I'm going to talk about potential coordinator hires. I'm going to talk about the impact on the roster, all of it. Before I get into it, I just ask that you like the video, you sub to the channel. If you're a Michigan fan especially, probably turn on notifications. I do post shorts about all of college football, but the long form videos, mostly about Michigan. Every now and then you'll get some prediction stuff. So I do want to get into Kyle Whittingham, who a lot of people know this by now, never really been on this side of the country. Born in California, played at BYU. I think his first real job was Idaho State, I want to say. Went straight from, no, it was Eastern Utah, my apologies. Eastern Utah, ended up at, I believe, Idaho State. Goes and coaches under Urban Meyer at Utah. And he's been at Utah since before Urban Meyer, actually, for 30 plus years. That's right, 1994, Kyle Whittingham goes to Utah. He has been there ever since. I believe he was a D-line coach. Worked his way up pretty quickly to defensive coordinator under Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer leaves. Kyle Whittingham is named the next head coach. I will say Urban Meyer in his last year, and you've got to remember this, Utah, I know you think of Utah as this Pac-12 program. Utah was in the Mountain West at the time. They were a Group of 5 program. Urban Meyer was there. He was their head coach, and they went 12-0. Kyle Whittingham was interim for the bowl game, wins it, gets named the permanent head coach. The rest is history. You're probably thinking Urban Meyer was able to go 12-0 there. What was Kyle Whittingham able to do? Well, within, I want to say 3 years, maybe 4. It was 2008. Kyle Whittingham went 13-0 at Utah. That was in the Mountain West. After that, they joined the Pac-12, and there were a couple rocky seasons in there, a couple 5 and 7 seasons, as you would expect. NIL, not a thing. The jump from the Group of 5 to the Power 5 was always going to be a tough deal, and it was. After that, they kind of just got things rolling, and they became the Utah we are today, with a couple 10-win seasons, and just kind of being a upper-tier Pac-12 team, always in contention, every now and then title game, and winning a couple of those title games, like we know Kyle Whittingham has done. The reality of Utah always was they were a Group of 5 school that jumped into the Power 4, Power 5 at the time, under Whittingham, and he did what he could. He made them as good as, in my opinion, Utah could really possibly be in that Pac-12, especially before NIL is a thing, even more so after, because they're under-resourced. They don't have the money of a BYU now. They don't have the money of a Texas Tech. They're down there, like Kenny Dillingham, complaining about money. So that is Kyle Whittingham's story, if you will. And I don't think you're going to find a guy at Utah that's going to say a bad thing about Kyle Whittingham. He's a family man. He's got values. He gets his team lined up and ready to play. And they show up every year. They've had a couple, I would call them unfortunate years, where it's been injury-filled. They had a star player. He went down. You're probably thinking about Cam Rising. You're correct. For the most part, though, he's been nothing but a success at Utah. And people are framing it as if he was run out of Utah. I know that's going to be the story from rival fan bases. This is what you need to know about Utah this year. Kyle Whittingham's most recent season, he went 10-2. They have a coach in waiting who is, I would say, growing restless, getting impatient. Utah wanted to make sure they had him locked up. So if you want to say they ran him out, sure. But 10-2, and take a guess who his 2 losses are. The first one was to Texas Tech, a top 4 team in America who vastly outspends everybody else in the Big 12 and is way more talented than everybody in the Big 12. Who was the second loss? BYU. If you're a rival fan, you'll say, oh, there he is in rivalry games. Okay, relax. It was on the road at night against BYU, who is the number 12 team in America. 2 losses, one at home to number 4, who, let's be honest, they didn't have much of a chance, and one on the road against BYU by, I believe, 3 points, who was the number 12 team in America. So that's what you need to know about Kyle Whittingham leading into it. I do kind of want to get into my take about it now, which is if you followed me for a long time over on College Football Chuck, I know this is College Football Chuck, but on TikTok, College Football Chuck, you know I'm a college football sicko who appreciates the Big 12 and the ACC probably more than a lot of people would like me to. Talk about them a lot. Love some of those guys. Kyle Whittingham was always one. He's an elite coach. He's an elite personality. He's got elite character. And coming into this year, I dare you to find a publication. They rank the coaches every year. Find one that didn't have Kyle Whittingham in the top 15. So I think he's a great coach. I think he's a personality fit, which is like rugged, tough, hard nosed, a winner. And he's always done more with less. And he's found a way to consistently go staff in an elite manner. Like this year, he had Jason Beck as his offensive coordinator from New Mexico, brought his quarterback, Devin Dampier, with him. They made incredible progress. Devin Dampier is a different man than he was last year. I think he was like 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions last year, and this year he was like 21-6, making a jump up from New Mexico. Very impressive stuff. Very good coach. Finds ways to win, like I said. The thing you're going to run into, and the reason that I was always cautious about Whittingham, I said on Twitter, I think he's the best of the like hell no candidates from the Michigan fan base, which was obviously like Jeff Brom, Clark Lee, and all that, guys that people didn't want. I said out of that group, I would like Kyle Whittingham because he's tough, he's hard-nosed, he's a winner, and I think he just matches well with Michigan. A lot of people will point out the age, and that is the reason I would personally put him in that group, because he is 66 years old. So what I really, really wanted was what a team like Ohio State has, or what like an Arizona State has, which is like our guy. Like, we know this guy isn't leaving us for nothing. Like, maybe the NFL comes in and snipes him, but other than that, we've got our dude for 7 to 10 years. Probably not going to be the case with Whittingham. I would assume if things go well, he's here 4 years, 7 years, somewhere between there. I know he's 66. He's a really in shape 66, I will admit. He's got like they talked about his workout streak. I think on ESPN, it's been like several years in a row, like thousands of days since he's missed a workout. Dude's jacked, might be in better shape than me. Never had any health concerns that I'm aware of. Here's the big thing for you. Never had any character concerns. Nobody's worried about Kyle Whittingham's character. Nobody's worried about what he's going to do off the field. How long's it been since we've had a guy like that for Michigan? I mean, good Lord. Good Lord. And Jim Harbaugh, I don't want to attack his character, but we got a lot of scandals going on under Jim Harbaugh. I don't think Kyle Whittingham would be that type of guy. I think his mandate is going to be to run a clean program, and I think he's going to get that done. I think he is the guy for that. I talked about loving him as a college football guy. What gives me pause is obviously number one, the age, which I think is okay for what Michigan is going to use him for, which is like a bridge guy to fix the narrative around Michigan, to fix the culture, and to win games along the way. And then in 4 to 7 years, you go get your guy of the future. I think that's what Kyle Whittingham is being used as, so the age doesn't bother me as much. The other thing is recruiting. I think we talked about Utah being under-resourced, and that's one thing. The other thing is he's never, Utah is the farthest east he's ever been, right? So I don't know how much familiarity he would have with recruiting this area. Head coach is not really as much into recruiting anymore, really, but they do push some guys over the edge. Those relationships do help. So I'm curious to see like the staff he builds, where their connections lie, and how they are as recruiters, because I think that's going to be big. So I think recruiting is something you can kind of sweep under the rug if you hire well enough. And I think age is obviously a concern if you wanted to coach for 10 plus years like me, but for what Kyle Whittingham is going to be, not a massive concern. So no football concerns for me. I think if you're looking at Kyle Whittingham and you're thinking like, oh man, we're not going to have this because not having this is what he's known for, like failing in this way is what he's known for. Does Kyle Whittingham have that? I mean, like I said, he's had quarterback injuries. He's never had a year where it's like, oh, just failed to develop that guy. I would argue that what he's doing right now with Devin Dampier, and I know he's not necessarily the offensive guy, but it's incredibly impressive. So When Kyle Whittingham shows up, we know we're going to get defense, but we can trust him to make offensive hires that are going to develop guys because that's what he's always done. And the times that Utah has struggled has been like transfer quarterbacks they've got in as backups and then they've had to play. So that's been the downfall of Utah. And I think he can handle that a little bit better at Michigan. I think you got a little bit more resources. You can bring a few more guys in. That is just my opinion. I understand the disappointment for Michigan fans. Like, if I'm looking around and thinking about Kenny Dillingham, apparently Michigan didn't want him. They didn't feel like he was a fit, but they liked Kyle Whittingham. Okay. Like, if that's how they feel, then okay, I understand the disappointment, though. Whenever you have your expectations like that for a guy who's like young and has that juice and could be your guy, you think of Dan Lanning, you think of Marcus Freeman, and that could have been a guy like Michigan has had. So I understand why Michigan isn't getting that, or I understand that Michigan isn't getting that. I understand it's going to be disappointing. I think overall, though, I'm more on board if you would have told me early that Michigan's main focus isn't going to be getting the young guy of the future. Like, their focus isn't going to get a Kenny Dillingham or a Glenn Schumann or a Bryant Haynes. They aren't shooting for their guy for the next 10 years. I would have been more on board with Whittingham and more on board with like righting the ship. And that's clear that's what Michigan wanted, right? They wanted a guy who will right the ship, who will run a clean operation, who will clear everything out, who will bring in a bunch of his own guys, who has no relationship with prior Michigan teams, and will fix everything around Michigan in terms of the narrative. And like I said, win some games while we're doing it. I think if you think of it like that, then the other options you would have been comparing him to, you would like him better than. And that's, I mean, you can search it up. I've always been of this opinion. Jeff Brom, I'd rather have Dillingham. Drinkwitz, I'd rather have Dillingham. Clark Lee, I'd rather have Dillingham. Because not only are those guys essentially serving the same purpose, because I don't see any of them being like the guy at Michigan that we all love and buy into. Whittingham is a better option in my opinion. He's a guy that I like more. Jeff Brom, you can again search it up. I never wanted the guy. If Michigan offered him, then screw them. They should have never done that. Clark Lee, I've said multiple times, I think he's a Diego Pavia merchant. I think his offensive coordinator is carrying him. Another thing I've thought is that Drinkwitz is a great football coach, and I've said multiple times, I think if you hire him just based on his ability to coach football, yeah, okay. But at the same time, does he really mesh? Does he really fit with Michigan? No, he doesn't. His personality doesn't mesh. You can tell he's like a deep South kind of guy, and I think Missouri is a good fit for him. I think he should stay there. Overall, I think Michigan got a lot better today. I think that hiring Kyle Whittingham changed the outlook of the program from the inside out in a big, big way. I think, and I've said this multiple times, Sharon Moore should not be the standard. That should not be the measuring stick, because at that point, if you're not in handcuffs, if your ankle doesn't beep whenever you walk outside, you're an upgrade over Sharon Moore. That being said, Michigan's played some good football over the last couple of years, at least at times. They've won 9 games this year. Did we like how it looked? No, we didn't, but it happened nonetheless. Kyle Whittingham is a much better football coach than Sharon Moore. He is a massive upgrade over Sharon Moore. So for all the people talking about Michigan settled, this is the downfall of Michigan, this and that, let's talk about absolute worst case scenario. Kyle Whittingham is the head coach at Michigan for 3 years, 4 years. And he's a better coach than Sharon Moore the entire time. That is the worst case scenario, right? And I think if you're talking about roster retention, if you're talking about recruiting, I get it. I understand it. Do I know who will and won't stick around for Michigan if he's hired? Well, he's hired? No, I have no idea. I know Biff Poggi talked about a potential mass exodus today. I think the reason Michigan kind of rushed into this hire, the reason they had this emergency meeting, I think they took their time. They got their candidates. They made an informed decision. But I think Biff Poggi kind of pressed them into this. I think they got to a point where it was like, okay, it's become very, very clear, and now it's became publicly clear, that if we don't do this today, there's going to be some guys entering the portal, and there's already been some guys shopping. If you're over on the Wolverine, listen, this is not my reporting. I think there has been a lot of people bracing for a guy like Andrew Marsh to leave. Do I know that he does that? No. Do I want to slander his name? No. What I do know, or what I've been told, is that his agent has been looking around, which that's his agent. Good on him. Maybe it's just his agent. Maybe he won't leave. We will see. From my understanding, that is a strong possibility. If it happens, I kind of just wanted to put it out there and let you guys know, like, it's not because of Kyle Whittingham. And this was, again, according to these guys over at the Wolverine, happening before Sherrone Moore was even fired. So, if Andrew Marsh does dip out of Michigan, just know it's not because of Kyle Whittingham. And if it is, that's a little bit wild because if you're a receiver, why would you want to play under Sherrone Moore anyway? You know what I mean? I think, again, Michigan clearly got better. They've got a better head football coach. They've got a great defensive mind in the building. I want to talk about the other minds he might bring into the building, which would be coordinators, position coaches, and so on and so forth. Poggi, if his intentions were pure, and he really did want to press administration into making this decision today, and that was the only reason he did that Texas podcast stuff, he felt like he needed to, okay, keep him in the building. In some form or fashion, I don't know, especially if the players love him, because, I mean, I'll be honest, I really like the guy. I like having him around. I think he's cool. If his intentions were pure, I think we'll see him stick around. I think Tony Alford needs to stick around. I think Sabian Hyder might be locked in either way. I'm not sure. I think Michigan's going to pressure him to keep Alford on the roster, and there's no reason he shouldn't. I don't know that you're going to go out and upgrade. So if Tony Alford wants to be at Michigan, I think he'll be at Michigan, and I think he wants to be at Michigan. If I'm talking about coordinators, though, because those are the only two that I'm like, all right, make sure we keep those guys. There are some others that if they keep, they keep, and I'd be fine with it. I'd be fine with the Lou Esposito. I would be fine with a Lamar Morgan. I would be fine with even Ron Bellamy. If I had to pick, I would say buy Ron Bellamy. But at the same time, I would understand if they kept him. In terms of coordinators, though, I said this on Twitter as well. I'm going to reach out and just grab some low-hanging fruit. And some people have already mentioned Jay Hill. That is BYU's defensive coordinator currently. If you know anything about BYU, I know some of you don't. That guy and his defense, it speaks for itself. They are very, very good. That is elite defense, especially for, again, the roster they have and how much they've really not put into signing it. They're always getting after the quarterback. They're always stopping the run. They're great on the back end. And the year to year, they're very consistent. I think Jay Hill would be a great defensive coordinator hire. I think that, and especially at the offensive side, I think the options are going to be plenty. I think people are going to be lining up for this job. And I think Michigan is going to write a massive check. I think they've shown, and I think they've outright said a couple times, we are willing to make whoever is our offensive coordinator, if it's the right guy, the highest paid coordinators in America. We have no fear, no shame about that. We want guys at the coordinator spots. That being said, I told you I was going to grab low-hanging fruit. Michigan may be reaching up much higher. For now, I'm going to tell you about the low-hanging fruit that is associated with Kyle Whittingham, and that is Jason Beck. He came over from New Mexico to Utah, and he brought Devin Dampier with him, obviously. Dampier likely would not be coming to Michigan. What I do say is you just have to look at the quarterback development that he's been able to show us. And that is Devin Dampier going from, if you look at his stats at New Mexico, we're talking about a guy that was 9 picks, 9 touchdowns. He comes to Utah, a step up in competition. He is a leader on the team, and he throws, I think it was 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, something in that ballpark. Drastic improvement. Drastic improvement. I like the New Mexico offense watching it. Their problem was always defense. That's why they were terrible. And I like the Utah offense. And as soon as I saw those guys coming over to Utah, I said, this team could win the Big 12. And they could have if they didn't lose to the 2 teams that were in the Big 12 title game. So that's the low-hanging fruit. I don't know if they would go there. I think they'll probably put a little bit more thought into the coordinator position than I have. Because again, I don't know who all Whittingham is connected to. I don't know how big of a whale they're willing to go get. But my bet is, if they don't absolutely love the Jay Hills of the world, the Jason Becks of the world, they'll go get a big fish. Because they have a big stick with a lot of money. And if you're looking around next year and you say, wow, Michigan got an elite staff. They got 2 elite coordinators, 2 of the best. How'd they get those guys? The answer is because they threw $3 million at them. Right? I think it's very possible that happens. I think it's very possible you're looking at an amazing Michigan staff next year led by Kyle Whittingham. What's the roster look like? Who all stays? Who's retained? It's up to God. As far as I know, in the current portal stage, it's going to come down to these kids deciding, like, do I want to stay amidst the chaos and amidst all this going on? Or do I want to go to these guys who are throwing just as much, or if not more, money at me, who might be in a better position long term? Or who might be framing it as if they're in a better position long term? Or maybe they have this coach I really like, or I had this relationship coming in. And there are just a lot of things that go into this other than hiring the head coach and talking to him about what it's going to be. My opinion, if you're a defensive player, not wanting to play under Kyle Whittingham is absurd. I would not understand it at all. Technically, we are talking about a guy who is from the Urban Meyer tree. I don't know if it qualifies. But offensively, I think you're not as concerned about the head coach as you are the coordinators, the position coaches. I think if Alford stays, you'd likely see the back stay. I think in terms of wide receivers, I'm not real worried about the current roster, other than Marsh, obviously, who is a good player. I'd be more worried about the recruits because I do really like Travis Johnson. I do really like a couple of those guys. I think they can run. I think they can play. But I think we'll see. I think we'll figure it out. I would expect Michigan to have a really strong portal cycle regardless of going and getting guys. Maybe it is some of those West Coast guys. Maybe it is some recruits in this class. I saw Kevin Obo. Michigan fans probably remember big recruiting battle with Texas, with Utah, and we lost to Utah. Is he going there to be close to home? Is he going there because he loves Utah? Or is he going there because of Kyle Whittingham? And will he come to Michigan? I think he has a pretty strong relationship with Malachi Lee, who has had some conversations about possibly pulling out of his letter of intent, but hasn't done so yet. So maybe that's what it takes to retain Lee, is that West Coast relationship. Maybe it gets Obo, and all of a sudden we're looking at this fantastic offensive line class. I think that that's very possible. I'm curious to see how it plays out overall. We're going to learn a lot in the coming days. I'm curious to see what questions they ask him immediately. Like, oh, Kyle, you're here day one. You haven't met the team yet. Maybe you met them one time. Who's staying? Who's leaving? What's your plan for retaining them? It'll be wild. It's going to be a lot to deal with if you're a Michigan fan. There's going to be a lot of noise surrounding it. There's going to be a lot of people spreading a lot of narratives. My narrative is Michigan's just got a dang good football coach. They got a massive upgrade over Sharon Moore, even though that's, like I said, a pretty low bar. They get a guy who is a family man, a guy who is high character, a guy who is gritty, a guy who is tough, a guy who is a winner. I don't think there's anybody out there who's going to dispute that. I think if Michigan made this hire like the previous 3 years, nobody would have said a word. The only reason the narrative has really spread at all is that Utah kind of pushed him out whenever previously he hadn't wanted to leave Utah, even when he did have the opportunity. So that is my feel on Kyle Whittingham. I do want to hear your thoughts in the comments. I want you to like the video, especially if you're still here watching for 23 minutes and not liking the video is crazy. Sub to the channel if you're a Michigan fan, especially if you're a college football guy. I'll be talking about it all, especially the playoffs coming up. Let me hear it in the comments. Kyle Whittingham, the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines.